Do you have a loved one with dementia and you're concerned about the holidays? Are you wondering, what do I do with all these emotions that I have? Old memories, and here they sit next to you, but they don't remember your memories. Those can be really sad times. But the question is, if you're going to bring your loved one over to your house, how are you going to prepare for that? So today, we're going to talk about those topics and many other tips and pieces of information that you will find helpful. Now, you're probably wondering, why are you talking to me? Well, I'm Pam Ostrowski. I wrote the book, It's Not That Simple, Helping Families Navigate the Alzheimer's Journey. And this book is based on my own 14-year journey with my parents. My mom was my best friend. She celebrated every single holiday and birthday on the calendar. So I can relate to the emotions and the challenges that we faced during that time. And my dad also went through dementia. So that's kind of my story. And this is filled with tips and guidance on the journey. So if you need that, please pick up a copy. You can buy it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other places. So what I'd like to do is say hello to my co-host, Lori Marsh. Lori, can you tell us a bit about you?
Certainly. Thank you, Pam. My name is Lori Marsh. I'm the marketing director at the Summit at Sunland Springs, an assisted living and memory care community located in Mesa, Arizona. And I've had the pleasure of working with Pam over the last few months, really bringing together some resources and some tools for families, as well as Pam running our support group. I look forward to our conversation.
Yeah, this sounds like it'll be, well, as fun as it can be. We like to bring a bit of levity. Honestly, this is such a serious topic, and you can get wrapped up in the emotion on the negative side. So we're going to start off with a couple of scenarios, and then we're going to talk about some happy stuff too. So just important for you to put your comments in the chat, please. If you have comments or questions, we are here to answer them. That's the whole purpose behind us doing this live, is so you can get your questions answered while you're watching. So let's talk turkey. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Let's talk about expectations and setting expectations. And that can be a wide variety of options there. It could be setting expectations with even caregivers at the community. Here come the families. Or it could be, I want to take my loved one out and they don't want to go. Or it could be, once they get there, they don't know where the toilet is. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen here. So, Lori, do you have any thoughts on what kind of expectations maybe that we could offer our audience?
Definitely. You know, the holidays are an emotional time no matter what. And I think we all come with a little bit of our own anxiety. We want that perfect Rockwell, image of family members and celebration and making memories together. And when you're dealing with cognitive decline, each month, each year can be something different. And so the biggest thing that we try to be able to help our families with is just really setting some reasonable expectations. And for that, it really means no expectations, but focusing on being present, being connecting with your loved one that is experiencing cognitive decline, whether they're in your home or they're in a community like ours at the Summit. The ideas really is the time that you're going to have together now, not really focusing on you don't remember, or of course you remember, or correcting them.
Right. Right. And so the thing that we need to realize is that this holiday, or these holidays, are not going to be like they used to be. And I can tell you, as long as I don't tear up, it was very difficult for me at Christmas and at Thanksgiving, to the point where I left the country. And I would celebrate the holidays with Mom, because she didn't know, even with decorations. I mean, I would decorate a room, we'd decorate the tree, we'd do all of these different things. But she didn't necessarily know what holiday it was. It was an activity. Take this pretty ornament and stick it on that sticky, pointy thing, and, isn't that pretty?
Right.
And so it's all about moments of joy when you talk about having a loved one with dementia. And so if you're planning on taking your loved one to your home, that can create some interesting scenarios. So we've actually run into situations where the loved one doesn't want to leave. And the expectation that needs to be set there before you even leave the house to go get them, if they're in a care community or in memory care, is if they say no, don't fight them.
No.
Just let it go and understand that this was a possibility, and then, go about your day and try again tomorrow. I mean, in reality, we get so attached to the specific day. And honestly, like, how many days after Thanksgiving did we all eat turkey? Does it really matter that you ate turkey with your loved one on Thursday versus Sunday? Probably not. Right. So we have to let go of some of that control and that perfection obsession that we have. Now, I know that there are care communities who do things specially for loved ones, for that timing aspect. And, if I wanted to be in Europe and I wanted to still celebrate Christmas or Thanksgiving with my mom, what do you guys do at the summit?
Sure. At the summit, we really welcome families to come in and spend time with their loved one. Everything from decorating their rooms to being able to come and celebrate. We have carolers coming in, cookies with Santa. We really try to give families an opportunity to come at various times throughout the holiday season to be able to have a new memory, not just the memory. I think one thing that families have to realize when they walk in, it's already a stressful season. And if you're walking in that door, you are bringing that. And family members, residents can feel that. And so really doing whatever it takes for you to leave that anxiety outside the door and being able to come and just be focused one-on-one with having a little project or doing a little decoration or a craft project, something like that, listening to carols, music, being able to focus on a little task at hand.
Yeah. And I love the whole Santa aspect. When Mom would see Santa, that was actually a trigger for her to be like, oh, it's Christmas. It wasn't the tree. It was Santa. And so it must be coming from childhood, right?
Right.
And I just love that you have so many different activities and events, and that, the advice you give about family members coming for those events and activities is something that they can do all year long, honestly, because I get asked all the time from my family clients that, what do we do? What do we talk about? And it's like, well, this isn't about talking. This is about moments of joy and doing an activity together, enjoying music together, just being together. You don't have to talk. And the problem with talking is you can get yourself into trouble. You start asking them questions. They have no idea what you're talking about. They respond incorrectly in your opinion. And so therefore they recall a memory differently than you do. And then you start arguing with them. That went south. So, we definitely want to take advantage of the offerings and the events and the activities, especially when, people are skipping down the hallway singing Christmas carols, right? So another tip that we want to make sure everyone is aware of is that when your loved one gets to your house, it's quite possible that their tastes have changed. And that becomes a problem when we try to correct them. And they may take the salt shaker or the pepper shaker and just smother. Well, and that happens with seniors as they age for taste buds. However, if they don't like it, then don't say, well, you've always loved my sweet potatoes or whatever, your ham or whatever, and just let it go. And that I think is probably, I mention it in the book all the time. Things are going to happen. Your expectations are going to be dashed. You're going to be disappointed or sad. They're going to pick up on that sadness. As you mentioned, they pick up on the emotions. So if you're anxious or sad, but if you're happy, they'll be happy. And so that's probably, I think, the number one tip people could take away from today. And then I find this disappointing that I have to point it out for setting expectations, but everybody in the family, you need to have a little meeting, and it can be a Zoom call, or you can just send this video to them. How we communicate with a loved one has to be with dignity and respect. They're adults. They've lived a full life. And it's so easy. And we're going to talk about some eating type of tips. But it's so easy because people will compare someone with mild cognitive impairment or early or mid-stage dementia to a child. They're so childlike. And and that just grates on my nerves because that's an unfair judgment. This person's lived a full life. So setting expectations, making sure that everyone understands that this could be the most entertaining holiday event you've ever had, and that you just need to go with the flow. Right? So let's move on to preparing for the visit. And that can include everything from how do you get someone to leave where they're comfortable, right? So one of the things that is important, I think, and we aren't very good at it, and I'm sure you've heard families go on and on and on when explaining something, is that they will say, well, we're going to get you ready, then we're going to go and we're going to go to our house and Susie and Uncle John and Bobby and everybody's going to be there and we're going to have a wonderful dinner. And they glazed over at get your shoes.
Right. I mean, I think a couple things to think about when you're planning an event and you're taking a resident out, like if they're coming out of the community, is really looking at the big scope of the day. The biggest thing for those with cognitive decline is to keep with their routine and with their schedule. And holiday events with a number of different people and in a different environment can be really overwhelming. So it's really best to be planning the event around the individual and thinking about them, not just adding them as one more person at the table because they have different needs. And I know you're going to speak to that. But one of the things to really think about is, are you allowing for them to keep some of the same routines, eating at the same time that they're used to eating? A nap usually is involved, just depending on where they're at in their progression. And so really trying to make sure that you're making those accommodations. I can also speak to food dynamics, that if somebody is going to be going and eating a variety of different foods than they're used to in a community, it really can have some disruption that you might not be prepared to handle. So really trying to think about what type of nutritional needs they're used to. When you're at a community like ours, we follow dietary guidelines. And so we really work to ensure that they're getting proper nutrition and they're not eating something that might be inflammatory or upset them, because that really can dampen a whole celebration if you have an event that you weren't quite prepared to handle. It also means make sure you have extra supplies, even if it's a change of clothes or briefs,
it's
depending
everything.
on where they're at.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things where we expect, well, we'll just let you, just like we do. We make the excuse of, well, it's just one day or 4. And in these folks, their digestive systems can't handle it. And so we're going to talk about eating and more about eating, because we haven't had enough talk about eating in the past week. 'Tis the season, right? So another thing to keep in mind is the disorientation that can happen. So whether they're getting into the car, like whose car is this? Why am I getting in the car? Who are you? And so I personally, Pam's viewpoint is that if a loved one is even at mid-stage Alzheimer's and beyond, they probably shouldn't be moved, and you should come to them, not the other way around. If it's mild cognitive impairment, early stage, early to mid, which is different for every individual, it's a very unique, individualistic type of disease. But bear in mind that they're the first priority. And I think I felt like the care community mom was at made sure that I was aware. It's like, no, she's probably not up for this. And so if they get disoriented at your home, make sure that they have someone with them. And we'll talk about that in a second. But they should give them a chance to orient. And then make sure that they've got a quiet place, that you have a sign that looks like a toilet on the door that leads to the bathroom. and keep the door closed so they can see the sign. Because a closet and a bathroom look an awful lot alike when you look at a door.
Yes.
And they're not doing that on purpose. They simply don't know. They have a need, they fulfill the need. And so we want to be very cognizant of that. So moving forward in preparing for the visit, in our dementia Q&A group there at the summit, someone said they had 29 people. Yeah, I mean, I would be running the other way, and I don't have mild cognitive impairment. Who are all these people? So we want to keep it to a group of 6 to 8, and that way it minimizes the noise and the disruption. Children need to be coached. And I don't know, do very many children come to the summit to visit?
We'd love to be able to have children. Obviously, COVID kind of made some things askew, but they're getting back to normal.
Yeah.
One thing just to kind of recognize is, as you said, coaching the children, they should be instructed before to understand to not get their feelings hurt if grandma or great grandma does not remember them, recognize them. Because that individual does not have the ability to categorize different people's ages. What they remember is things from their childhood, things from 20, 30 years ago, not necessarily who this newest, littlest bundle of joy is.
Yeah, and that's a great tip. So if we'll talk to the children is important. And everybody needs to be calm and kind and be prepared for, if you're asking questions of the individual, that their answers are not going to match up with your expectations. And sometimes they can ramble on and answer an entirely different question, right? So, and one of the things, of course, this was for Thanksgiving more so than probably Christmas, but I asked the Dementia Q&A group, I said, what's the number one thing everybody's going to be watching on TV? And they all yelled, football. And that's a really loud sport. And everybody's cheering, and their teams are there, and they're making a lot of noise. And I said, that just put on some Perry Como, Doris Day, something that's much calmer for me. I mean, them. So it's that noise. And my mom had very sensitive hearing all the way through until she passed. And so even when we would have Christmas events where we were at, everybody would be in the same room, all the residents in the same area, and it would get noisy. And I could see her start to get agitated. And so I would just, wheel her out, and we'd just go for a spin outside, get some fresh air. And you need to do that when your loved one is visiting with you too. Take them outside if the weather permits, or, move them to a quiet room where they can sit. And, it's important to have someone there with them who's their care, not a caregiver per se, but someone who can guide them and help them out with anything that they need.
A companion that is focused on them.
Exactly.
Not necessarily responsible for things in the kitchen or watching over another small child, but someone that is focused, that could pick up on some of the cues when the agitation might start, or just be able to help do some redirection if the behaviors start to kind of go a little sideways. So having a companion is a great tip.
Yeah, and it helps everybody else have peace of mind because you don't want the loved one to walk out the front door and start wandering. And you don't want to have to worry. So for me, it was a 24/7 worry type of thing ever since I brought my parents out from New Hampshire to Phoenix. And they're always in the back of your mind. And to bring them over for the holiday meant I would have no rest because I not only had to have everything ready, but I had to know where mom and dad were.
Right.
And so that, talk about exhausting, like the holidays aren't exhausting enough. So we bring that. So get some help, either recruit family members, one member though, make it consistent, right? You don't want to, Bobby's got 2 to 4 p.m. and Susie's got 4 to 6. That's too confusing. They need to know who they look to for where's the bathroom. I need some help changing my clothes. I mean, whatever the issue is, that's really important. Okay. The big day arrives. So I have noticed that with Alzheimer's in particularly, that they love sugar. Seniors love their cookies.
Yeah.
And candies and you name it. And so if you want them to eat, usually the cookies are out and the candies and the chocolates and everything is out, especially for, the December holidays.
Right.
Put that stuff away if you want them to eat anything. And also back to your point, nutritionally, if all they ate was a bunch of chocolate, it's probably not going to go well in about 2 to 3 hours or maybe even sooner.
Right.
So we need to put that stuff away. Serving small portions. So you had mentioned how the summit actually prepares food and how it looks. Can you comment on that?
Yes. I mean, a couple things to consider is that when somebody is going through cognitive decline, one of the things that can happen in their body is they start losing the ability to swallow. And we are trained professional caregivers and have clinical staff that can pick up on the nuances. But I think a lot of families that might have loved ones at home, maybe living with them in their caregiving, they're not trained to realize what might be happening where the individual might be losing the ability to swallow appropriately. And things even like drinking water that we take for granted becomes very challenging. So when we're looking at food, you really need to be thinking about not the mom that you knew from 6 months ago or a year ago, but really be thinking and talking to the care staff if you were taking somebody from a community for an event. What are they eating these days? How are they eating? At the summit, we create about 5 different types of textures for our individuals. Some of the individuals can't necessarily use a fork and knife to cut something anymore, but maybe they also need some additional mechanical texturization of the food in order for them to be able to eat it and actually get the nutrition in their body. So we'd love when families come and dine with our residents in the community. We are happy to have them, or even let them go into our courtyards and be able to enjoy a meal there. But it's something to realize that being able to give them the food the way they need to be able to eat it, nobody wants to have an emergency situation because they're choking on food that you thought was going to be appropriate. And they weren't able to handle it at the table. Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the other things I advise is keep the amount of food that is available to 3 or 4 foods. So, you go to any Thanksgiving feast or Christmas feast or any holiday feast, and there's food everywhere. That's overwhelming. Anytime you have too many choices for them, it's overwhelming, it's overstimulating. And they may take a little bit or a lot of everything, and now you've got this giant plate, and now they won't be able to eat it because it's too overwhelming. But that being said, if you can serve them, so I know certain spouses are used to serving their spouse, so that's not an unusual thing. But another important thing is to make sure that you cut up their food, or like you said, it's all about the different forms. So if it's chopped, minced, pureed, those types of things, don't do that in front of everybody else. That goes back to the keep some dignity in it, and know in advance the preparation technique that needs to happen, and then it's just going along with everybody else. Not anything that needs to be pointed out.
Exactly, normal is the most important thing, because they will notice if you're. And I visualize, I've watched this happen where the daughter comes over, here, Dad, let me cut this up for you, and of course he's sitting there. They have cognitive impairment, but they're still in there. And the poor guy, I mean, literally his shoulders just slumped, like, wow, I can't even cut my own food on a holiday, and that's not what you're intending. You're trying to be helpful, but it has the exact opposite effect. And that breaks my heart. And so, I want people to realize dignity. Would you want someone to do this for you in your current capacity? The answer is no. I can cut my own food, Lori. And you can't have my wine.
And well, the other thing too is just thinking about that place setting. if you're going to be bringing someone home for the holidays, you are needing to make accommodations at the table setting for that individual and not expect that they have the strength or the ability maybe to pick up a stemmed glassware or to be able to handle a lot of extra dishware that's just not in their physical capacity anymore. So really being mindful of allowing them to have a cup or some silverware that they can be able to manipulate on their own.
Yeah, I like the stemless glasses. They make them in plastic as well with the finger holds. Yeah. Because then, and that's another thing we need to keep a track of is hydration. Yeah. Because if your loved one gets dehydrated, they're going to start becoming agitated. Their memory loss will be worse because the brain folds are collapsing because they're not getting enough fluids. And especially if you're going to take them away, you know, whether it's at home, whether they're living with you or you're visiting them or whether you're bringing them to your home, you've got to keep in mind that they constantly need fluids. So understand from whoever is caring for them what their fluid capacity is. How much did they have already? Because if they didn't have orange juice or fluids of any sort for breakfast for some reason, now they're dehydrated. Now you're taking them out. You're going to, you know, maybe you wanted to go look at holiday lights or you want to have this huge agenda of things to do. And they're sitting there slowly dehydrating. And it happens a lot faster for seniors than it does for us. So really important. This kind of falls into expectation setting as well as the big day, which is they may only stay an hour. They may get there, be disoriented, have a few, you know, chocolates or cookies and say, I want to go home. And home being a different place than where they're at. Don't let that break your heart, you know, because a lot of people feel that way. They take it personally, but it's time for them that they're done. And you can't force them to stay. You shouldn't be trying to convince them to stay. They're done. And so it's time to take them back. And you've got to be prepared to do that. And everybody's got to be okay with that, right?
I mean, I think that also goes with timing. One thing that happens with people that have cognitive decline is maybe they're experiencing sundowning, which happens where they get agitated and the behaviors start to change later on in the afternoon, early evening. And really understanding that your individual is probably much better earlier in the day. So the care staff might be getting them up going for the day. So, you know, you really want to try to visit a community or take them out for a short visit for a short amount of time in the early afternoon when they're going to be the most alert, when they're going to have the best attitude, when they have enough sleep and rest, and also plan for the fact that they cannot keep the stamina up of a meal, family, running errands, and then thinking that they're going to have another activity.
Let's go to zoo lights.
Yeah, they just cannot keep that level. So really, if you think that a loved one is going to be teetering on that, it's so much better just to come to the community where they're at. Visit for an hour, visit for a meal or an activity, and cut it short. It's so much nicer to end on a nice note and not let, you know, the collapse someone happen. Because they're just overexhausted and their body can't handle that. Yeah,
absolutely. Great tips, because I think one of the biggest challenges too is that, again, those expectations of wanting to have more. And you know, you have to meet them where they're at. And I know we say that a lot, but in this particular situation, it's even more important. I actually, you know, as a family member, I can think of lots of things that I regret, lessons I learned and mistakes I made. And Mom used to love holiday lights. So I came over and visit and I bundled her up in a blanket and gloves and everything. And the care community's like, we're going to go look at holiday lights. And so Mom was mid to late stages, but she hung out in that period for 3 or 4 years. So it was a long, late stage. And so I had her in a wheelchair and we wheeled her into the van and she was fine. But as soon as the van got out into the streets, the bright headlights, because, you have to wait till it's dark. Now it's dark inside the van. The white headlights are hitting her, and she just freaked out. And I unbuckled my seatbelt, and I stood in front of her so that I would block the lights. And I took her hands and I took her face, and I said, "It's going to be okay. We're just going to go see, holiday lights." And I'm thinking, she probably doesn't know what I'm talking about. and I was so excited for that event. I was like, "Oh, Mom's going to be so happy."
Your expectations.
My expectations were way up here, and I was heartbroken and scared. I had scared her, and then I felt horrible all the drive home. I'm like, I should have known better. Then you do the guilt and the beating yourself up and stuff. So family members, definitely think about what you expect from this event. What is it that you want to get from this? This is a moment of joy, and every minute, not getting in the van and making this big production, every minute that you spend with them holding their hand is important. So the other thing I wanted to chat with you a bit about is the whole how we communicate with them throughout this process. So I talk a lot about, and we've done actually, one of our presentations earlier in the year was about how do you communicate? How do you talk with someone with cognitive impairment? And, I always talk about, short sentences, keep it simple, don't ramble on, which is why sometimes I feel that they left me a long time ago. So, but to me, my pet peeve is the baby talk. "Oh, sweetie, how are you? It's okay. Don't you worry. We'll take care of that." It's, if I talked to my mother like that or my father like that when they were fully cognitively capable, I would have been put in a corner. Who do you think you're speaking to? So why would that change now?
Right.
Yeah.
Keeping that dignity, as we've mentioned already.
Yep.
And really keeping the questions very short, being able to not offer too many suggestions.
Yep.
And really have that thinking, how are you going to help make the process as easy as possible for them?
Exactly. And I think it also comes down to appreciating how long it takes for them to process information. Right. So if I ask you, what would you like some ice cream? And I don't hear from you, then it's like, all right, well, fine, we won't get that.
Right.
And you're still sitting there going, ice cream, that's that cold stuff. I wonder if they have vanilla. And so you're going like 10, 20, 30 seconds before you respond. And, in the society we live in, it's just bang, 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 5 seconds. You get 2. And if you're lucky, I'll give you 5, but I'm never giving you 10, 20, or 30, right?
What would be a better way to say it?
Well, I would just pause and wait and see, or in a lot of cases, you can just bring the ice cream over,
Who doesn't want ice cream?
Right.
Or making it simple, do you want chocolate or vanilla?
Right, and present it to them.
Yes.
Again, a lot of what we're talking about is stage dependent.
Yeah.
If it's mild cognitive impairment, they may struggle. That was something I forgot to mention is at the place settings that you were bringing everything, that's a great idea. The care community the mom was at, they still had roll-ups. Well, what does a roll-up look like? A napkin. Well, where's the silverware? Right. It's called hide the silverware roll-up. So make sure that keep it simple. A fork and a spoon is probably plenty. Leave the napkin out and let them put the napkin on themselves. Do not, my dad would tuck the napkin in to make a bib for my mom. And she would pull that off and she'd push herself away from the table. Because again, dignity and respect. Don't make a napkin into a bib for me. Nobody else is wearing one like that. How dare you? Yeah. So
good tip.
Lots of heartbreaking things. But, the other thing too is not to correct them. When we talk about communication, it's just too easy to say, well, that's not what happened last Christmas, and what's the point?
Yeah.
Well, do you want to be happy? Or do you want to be right?
Yes.
And a lot of times, and it's amazing, I have friends in their 50s and 60s, and they'll say, oh, you mean, because mom's talking about this, and that's not what happened. And I said, who cares? Why is it so important that you make sure that she knows she's wrong and you're right? And we stand in that for some reason. And I have no idea why that is. So, and then the key thing here is that to not get frustrated with them, because they may ask you, where's the gravy? Where's the gravy? Where's the gravy? Many, many times. And then lastly, the thing that I've also seen is family members talking over.
Right.
Not recognizing that they may have something to say, or literally, physically, they're sitting down and you and I would be having a conversation and they wouldn't be part of it. Would you do that normally?
Right. Ignoring their presence in the conversation, even if they're not adding something, still interacting and engaging with them.
Exactly. So I think those are we've covered a lot in a very short period of time. So what I'd like to do is see if we have any questions in the chat. And while we're doing that, Lori, did you want to talk about some of the events that we have at the summit?
Yes, I am so ecstatic that really Pam and I connected at the beginning of the year, and we have the opportunity to bring her on board as our support group leader. So every couple of weeks, we offer a dementia Q&A. It's more than a support group. It's really getting some of your questions answered in an environment that is it is supportive and it's lending itself to a conversation and a dialogue, but you're going to walk out of there with some tools and some information on how to apply them in your family, and not just a sob story, because we know that this could be a really heavy topic of what people are going through, but really being able to acknowledge that you can get through this when you have some of the resources, when you have some of the information. And so you can see some of that information for our upcoming Q&A groups. If you have signed up for this event, we would be sending you an email to invite you to attend that in person or through Zoom, as well as we'll have a slide on the contact information if you would like some of that information.
Sounds good. Well, and one of the things that impresses me most about the summit is that there are a lot of events, informational events. You know, you have people
I failed to mention that.
Yeah. You talk about me, I'll talk about you. Okay. Legal matters. Yeah. Like, what documents do you need to have in place before you even, are when you start to look at assisted living or even independent living? You've had people in about financial advice.
How to pay for this.
Right.
I mean, not planning for cognitive decline, someone to get Alzheimer's or dementia, let alone someone that maybe they cannot care for them safely in their home anymore, especially coming through COVID. There's been a lot of isolation. There's been a lot of decline in just overall general health, being able to understand what are the options out there and financially how much does this cost and how do you pay for it? Right,
exactly. So, I mean, go to thesummitaz.com and click on events and you'll find out all of the different activities that you have. So can we put up the chat questions? I don't see it on the screen right now.
I will go ahead and I can see one of the questions. So the question is, Pam, you can answer this one. What do you think is the right way to address it if somebody is getting bothered or if the loved one is getting agitated at the event? How should we handle that?
Well, what's interesting is I've had a family member say that someone came up to their loved one and it was a guest, right? Because it's a friend of the family's. Yeah. And they start talking to them and they're like, well, so what question, what is it that you remember? Or they start interrogating them. Wow. And there's so many ways to handle that, depending on who that person is. One might be to use your redirecting skills on them and say, you know what, so-and-so needs you in the kitchen. Right. And I don't care where so-and-so is and whether that was a lie or not, because they need to leave your loved one alone. And, a lot of people feel that they have, they've been through the experience. So they want to help. Right. And they want to understand more and they want to add value to the situation. But holidays and events are not the appropriate time to do that. And only if you've been asked to do that, because you're not a professional And so ultimately, if there's a family member who's disturbing the loved one, the best thing to do is redirect the person who's the offender, because it's not your loved one's fault. And they can't, I'm like, with my mom being in a wheelchair, she couldn't go anywhere. Right?
Right.
So, I was like a hawk watching who was talking with her and who wasn't and what her reactions were.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because you can get those cues from someone, even if they are nonverbal.
Absolutely.
That they're uncomfortable in the situation.
Absolutely.
What do you think about someone? This is another question about hiring a caregiver to come for the event, a companion.
So I think with companions and caregivers, you would have to introduce that person a week or two in advance into becoming a companion and hanging out with your loved one and accompanying them.
Not to spring it on them.
Hey, this is Susie. Yeah, Susie's going to be keeping. Yeah, so it's an unusual. Anything new will be rejected. It's a fear thing, right? Yeah. I don't know you and I don't want you touching me. So introducing them a couple weeks in advance, if at all possible. If you already have someone who's a companion or is a caregiver during the week, asking them to help out for that event is definitely a great idea. That way you know that a professional who's trained and knows your loved one's quirks and idiosyncrasies, as well as what their needs are physically and nutritionally, then that's that sense of, oh, I don't have to think about that. I can just relax a little bit. Because remember, that's why we're doing all of these celebrations, right?
That's what we say.
That's what we say. Exactly. Any other questions up there?
I do see a question actually asking about travel. So what do you think about, and how would you best plan for traveling, about taking a loved one? Maybe they're not in the advanced stages, right? They have some mild cognitive decline. There's something going on, but we really have a trip that we want to go on to go see family. How do you think that should be handled?
Well,
can I just have mom go on the plane and meet my sister on the other end?
Oh, that makes me nervous. Because, and again, this is stage dependent, but even with mild cognitive impairment, an airport is overwhelming. What we don't realize is that when we're processing information, we're taking in the new environment. Every time we take a step forward, it's like, okay, there's gate, there's that, there's the bathrooms, there's the water, there's the restaurant. They can't do that. And so it's like, oh my gosh, this is so noisy. Oh my gosh, this is so noisy. And they can't take in where they're going. And, even if someone was able to meet them at the gate, which is usually what the airlines will do, is they will have a person escort them to the gate. And now the question is, well, are they going to hang out with them?
Right.
Probably not. So there's a few options. One is either you, if you're on the sending end, then you go with them. I know many of my clients that travel with they go with, drop them off, and then fly back. And that's really the safest way to ensure that they get there. I think it's a dangerous thing to do, especially in today's world. It's easy to spot somebody who's struggling and make them a victim. And I hate to say that, but it's just that they can't help themselves. Right. They're defenseless. And so I would say if you want to travel, you've got to have a companion with them. That's my take on it. What do you think?
Well, I think that travel can be overwhelming right now
for us.
in any time frame, and that anxiety really can be built up. But so again, I think the biggest question is, what is the reason for it?
Yes.
Is the travel because you're going to go to a wedding and you really want to have grandma and mom there? Well, in the big scheme of things, it makes more sense to, have that travel. Maybe that family is coming back the other way because it's just not going to be meeting the expectations. And that's really what we've been saying the whole time, is those expectations need to be very, very minimal in just being in the moment and present.
I totally agree. And that's a very good point, that the reason why we have someone travel is because we expect, that favorite E word, expect something to happen on the other end that's big. And the sad part about that is if they don't recognize those people or they, go sit with somebody else, there's so many things that could hurt someone's feelings that, why would you do that? And why would you put them through that stress? Because again, disorientation. You're moving them, and every time you move someone with mild cognitive impairment, especially if it's early to mid-stage dementia and Alzheimer's, they don't know what's next, and they don't know where they are. And as far as they're concerned, they've just been kidnapped. And they're going to fight, and they're going to be agitated, and it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be the wonderful Norman Rockwell that you mentioned experience. It's going to potentially could be very ugly and unpleasant. So let's not do that.
Pam, you mentioned your clients. And I know you wrote this fantastic book. It's not that simple. But tell me a little bit more about what services you offer.
Well, thank you. So Alzheimer's Family Consulting is based on helping family members figure out how to get over the fear, confusion, anxiety, guilt, and panic that goes with a dementia diagnosis. Because as soon as you hear that, you realize something really big is happening, and I have no idea how to deal with that. Right. So from that diagnosis all the way through to the end, I'm there to hold your hand and guide you and talk about tips and ask questions, give you different words to use, because a lot of times we as adult children use the wrong words, and we also take our loved ones at face value. So they might say, I hate green beans. And then you put green beans in front of them and they eat them like there's no tomorrow. It's the fact that they can't find the right words. So they use other words, and you believe those words, and that was never their intent. So it gets very confusing for everyone involved. So let's use the right words. Let's look at how we have those conversations. So I spend a lot of time helping them build a plan based on trigger points of when the person is at mild cognitive impairment, as opposed to when they're in mid-stage Alzheimer's. It's like, all right, so we're caught now in the middle of this, and there's a lot of guilt and regret already have been generated, and now we have to kind of work through those emotions and address those and do the best we can for our loved one and not make it about us.
Yeah, you're really like an advocate, being able to help navigate that family, work through the next steps in an unbiased way to really give them the tools and the resources that they need.
Yeah, coach them through it. Everybody needs a plan. Everybody needs a map to get to their destination. So,
good.
Yeah. So thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Well, I think we're covered all of the chat questions at this point in time. I would like to say, Lori, thank you so much for this amazing year, and for this is our 4th presentation at this point in time. So if you haven't seen the other 3, please go back on the YouTube channel and on Facebook and find those. We want to make sure that you have the tools that you need, and we try to do the best we can. But you know what? Lori will be following up with the video link and the tips sheet. So there's a PDF that she'll be sending out that is specific to how do you cope with dementia during the holidays. So you'll have that as well. So thanks so much, Lori. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Great information, great tips. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Happy holidays.